Hello, and welcome to the story of a breathtaking island off the southwestern coast of the Korean peninsula, Jeju Island, often called the Hawaii of the East. As South Korea's largest island, Jeju boasts stunning landscapes and a rich, unique folk culture, drawing tourists from every corner of the country. Meanwhile, in Gangwon Province in northwestern South Korea lies Incheon, the nation's third-largest city. Just 24 miles west of Seoul, Incheon is a vital port city with modern infrastructure. To its south sits Ansan, home to Danwon High School, a public institution that became the heart of a tragic tale in 2014. That year, 325 second-year students from Danwon High were gearing up for a 4-day field trip. Their plan? A ferry ride from Incheon Port to Jeju Island. At the time, a massive ferry was docked at Incheon Port. Originally owned by Japan's Oshima Transport Company Limited, this vessel had sailed for 18 years without a single incident. In 2013, it was bought by South Korea's Chonghae Marine Company, led by Chairman Yoo Byung-un. He renamed it Sewol, meaning beyond the world, a name reflecting his high hopes. Overhauling an old ship was no small feat, and under Yoo's watch, the Sewol was expanded with extra cabins. The 5-deck ferry featured cargo holds on the first and second floors, passenger cabins on the third and fourth, and the bridge and crew quarters on the fifth. Yoo, a photography enthusiast, even added an art gallery at the bow to display his work. The revamped Sewol stretched 479 feet long, 72 feet wide, and 46 feet tall, with a displacement of 6,825 tons. It could carry up to 960 people and 987 tons of cargo, making it South Korea's largest ferry of its kind. On March 15, 2013, it began regular service between Incheon Port and Jeju Island, running 3 times a week. The schedule was carefully planned, departing Incheon at 6:30 p.m. and arriving at Jeju by 8 a.m., letting passengers sleep comfortably overnight without disrupting their next day. In the spring of 2014, over 300 Danwon High students boarded buses to Incheon Port, buzzing with excitement for their ferry adventure. None could have foreseen the century-defining disaster awaiting them. It was Tuesday, April 15, 2014. The students arrived at Incheon Port early, lining up with colorful suitcases of all sizes, eager to board their ferry, the Oum. But the weather turned sour. Thick fog rolled in, slashing visibility across the sea. For safety, the Air Traffic Control Center issued a warning, halting all nighttime departures. 10 ships quickly docked, and the students chatted lively to pass the time, staring at the misty sea and praying for the fog to lift. By 8:30 p.m., the haze began to clear and conditions improved. Still, the Oum stayed put, likely for safety. The kids grew restless, a flicker of unease creeping in. Then came news. The Sewol, a sister ship to the Oum under the same company, was set to sail that night. Laden with cargo and bound for Jeju, it requested immediate departure. After reassessing the weather, the control center lifted restrictions, making the Sewol the only ferry cleared to leave. Over 100 passengers were already aboard, but plenty of space remained. To keep their trip on track, the captain and school officials decided to switch the students from the Oum to the Sewol. Cheers erupted as the kids texted or called their parents about the change. Over 300 students hauled their vibrant suitcases aboard, buzzing with excitement. For most, it was their first time on such a grand ferry. They marveled at everything. Some playfully banged the railings, others laughed and explored. Under the teacher's guidance, they settled into cabins on the 4th floor, specially reserved for Danwon High. Teachers stayed on the 5th with the crew, while other passengers filled the 3rd floor. The cabins lined a long hallway, each with windows offering sea views. 8 bunk beds filled every room, dorm style, with narrow but tidy walkways. The kids loved it. Some unpacked, others gazed out at the ocean, while the crew prepped for departure. Outside, the port was eerily quiet, save for the hum of the engine and waves lapping the hull. A thin fog lingered, but the Sewol was cleared to sail. The anchor rose, and with a horn's blast, the ferry eased away from Incheon port, bound for Jeju. As the shore faded, the students' excitement soared. South Korea's strict education system left little room for breaks, making this trip a rare escape. Some ventured to the deck to feel the night breeze. Others roamed, snapping photos, while a few snacked and swapped ghost stories in their cabins. Down in the third-floor lounge, 2 Filipino singers performed, their melodies filling the air as passengers toasted the journey. At 10 p.m., everyone gathered on deck for a dazzling fireworks show, the bursts lighting up the night and chasing away worries. The next day was a teacher's birthday, so the students secretly planned a surprise, eager to celebrate with cake and photos. By 8:30 a.m., the students stirred awake. Some headed to the third-floor lounge for breakfast. The sea was calm, and the trip was over halfway done. Jeju was just 2 hours away. Then, disaster struck. At 8:48 a.m., the cabins jolted violently. Containers crashed into the sea, sending water spraying wildly. Worse, the ship didn't stabilize. It tilted 30 degrees to the left. In the lounge, passengers tumbled like dominoes. Inside the cabins, kids and luggage slammed against walls. The hallways filled with fallen students, many injured. Choi Diak-ha, a calm second year from Danwon High, was in a fourth-floor hallway when the shaking hit. Sensing danger, he dialed 119 at 8:52 a.m. Trembling but composed, he explained the chaos to the operator, then handed the phone to a teacher. She screamed for help, too panicked to clarify details. The call returned to Choi, who detailed the situation. Over 300 students aboard, desperate for rescue. The operator relayed the call to Mokpo's Coast Guard, near the incident site in South Jeolla Province. Mistaking Choi for crew, they pressed for coordinates and technical details. The boy struggled to describe the scene, pleading for help. Remarkably, he was the first to signal the outside world before the crew. Soon, the ship's intercom crackled, repeating a message to stay put at least a dozen times. 3 minutes after Choi's call, at 8:55 a.m., second mate Kong, he signaled Jeju's control center for rescue, alerting the Mokpo Coast Guard by 8:59 a.m. A patrol boat was dispatched after Choi's plea. Inside, dazed students clung to walls as the intercom urged calm. Teachers soothed them, and fear eased slightly. They trusted the ship would right itself. A few cracked jokes, breaking the tense silence, lifting spirits as they awaited help. By 9:07 a.m., Jindo's control center, near the Sewol, received Kong his distress call. They ordered the crew to distribute life jackets and prepare evacuation. At 9:13 a.m., the tilt worsened, surpassing 50 degrees, yet rescue teams hadn't arrived. Bizarrely, the intercom kept insisting everyone stay put, specifically telling Danwon students and teachers not to act rashly. No further guidance came. Panic swelled as students donned life jackets with teachers' help, unable to stand in the slanting hallways. Half an hour in, a student spotted a red ferry, the Dura Ace, through a window. Hope searched. The Dura Ace, nearest to the scene, raced over after Jindo's call, arriving first. Containers littered the water, but its captain supplied life jackets and boats, inching closer. Yet the Sewol's crew did nothing. No evacuation began. 5 minutes later, the Dura Ace urged action, but second mate Kong, he cited a broken intercom and feared passengers wouldn't survive evacuation. Despite Jindo's assurances, the crew hesitated. At 9:32 a.m., fishing boats joined the effort, followed by Mokpo's Coast Guard Patrol 123 and Helicopter B 512. None boarded the sinking ship. Passengers, still obeying the intercom, stayed inside. The rescue seemed disjointed. Vessels circled aimlessly, coordination lacking. By 9:35 a.m., water hadn't breached the cabins and rescue boats surrounded the ferry. Evacuation could have saved many, but none came. A minute later, the situation spiraled. Water flooded the third-floor deck, then the hallways, tilting the ship to 62 degrees. Screams echoed as 2 teachers were swept away. students broke down, some incoherently calling parents. Via Kakao, families learned of the crisis, praying desperately as water roared. At 9:37 a.m., Captain Lee Jun-suk made his final tilt report to Jindo before all contact ceased. Coast Guard rubber boats dodged containers, reaching the deck by 9:48 a.m. Their first rescues? 8 crew members, including Lee, not passengers. By 9:54 a.m., the left side submerged. Some students, defying orders, fled with a passenger's help, clinging to hoses to reach the deck for helicopter pickup. The tilt hit 70 degrees. In the third-floor lounge, water shattered windows, drowning adults, students, and kids. Escape meant climbing 65 feet up fire hoses. Some made it with aid, but weaker ones didn't. The lounge flooded fast, swallowing many. Park Song, a fisheries manager 25 miles away, heard of the sinking while patrolling illegal fishing. He sped his vessel, Jeollanam-do 2011, to the scene, arriving 76 minutes in. Shocked, he saw the Sewol nearly capsized, helicopters hovering, and over 20 boats idle. Ignoring hesitation, he boarded the deck with his team, saving 28 passengers. His warning lights spurred nearby fishing boats into action, rescuing 120 more in 15 minutes. By 10:15 a.m., with the ship at 90 degrees, desperate passengers jumped into the frigid sea, faith shattered. At 10:17 a.m., the Sewol flipped fully, only its right side visible. 40 students on the fourth deck swam free as water poured in, all rescued. But others, trapped by jammed doors, pounded windows and screamed, texting final goodbyes. The ship's sinking. "Mom, Dad, I want to see you." By 10:18 a.m., the Coast Guard sealed off the site, barring boats from nearing as the ferry sank deeper. Park Sung spotted a boy in a life jacket yelling for help near the wreck. Risking suction, he saved Park Junha, a Dan 1 second year, the last survivor. Park Junha had dragged a girl through the flooding cabin, diving as it flipped. He surfaced, she didn't. By 11:18 a.m., only the green bow peaked above water. Rescue efforts faltered. Dozens of agencies overlapped with no clear leader. At 10 a.m., President Park Geun-hye was briefed but vanished for hours. At 11 a.m., as the ship sank, the Central Disaster Agency told the Blue House there were no casualties. NBC and other outlets echoed this for 49 minutes. Relieved parents tried calling their kids, met only by silence and haunting last messages. When the truth emerged, outrage erupted. The government admitted confusion, not malice. Rescue chaos persisted. Navy wreck divers arrived at 12:40 p.m. without gear. Coast Guard deep-sea divers at 1:42 p.m. stalled by tides. At 5:15 p.m., Park Geun-hye surfaced, stunned by the lack of progress, asking why students in life jackets were hard to find. Initial underwater searches at 6 p.m. yielded nothing despite claims of mass deployment. By 10:20 p.m., a diver and a student were pulled out alive, but died soon after. Parents, sleepless, confronted Prime Minister Young Hong-won at a Jindo gym. Chaos ensuing. Coast Guard promises of air pumps rang hollow. Families flocked to Jindo's port, distrusting officials. By April 18th, the Sewol was fully submerged. Volunteer divers were blocked by the Coast Guard. Media flip-flopped, stoking anger. The captain and crew's cowardice, fleeing while passengers stayed, ignited fury. Serious rescue began April 19th, with Navy, Coast Guard, and civilians diving by 4 a.m. inside. The silent wreck stunned them. 49 bodies recovered that day. Searches ended November 11th, 209 days later. Of 476 aboard, 172 survived, 304 died or vanished, including Choi Diaka, the first to call for help. The Sewol sinking became South Korea's worst maritime disaster. In August 2015, Shanghai Salvage signed a $76 million deal to raise the wreck. Cost ballooned to $233 million. On March 2017, crane ship Renhua 30 lifted the Sewol to Mokpo New Port, 1,091 days after sinking. Investigations blamed overloading, 2,143 tons of cargo against a 987-ton limit, shoddy retrofits raising the center of gravity, and too little ballast water, 761 tons versus 1,703 needed. Crewman Oh Dong-suk's confession revealed cut corners in cargo holds, hastening the flood. Theories of external impact, like a submarine collision, faded. No hull damage was found. The crew's inaction chilled spines. With 44 lifeboats and rafts for 2,100, all 476 could have lived. Only 2 boats launched. Captain Lee Jun-suk, resting during the crisis, fled in a shirt and underwear, ignoring rescue duties. Second mate Kong, he rejected evacuation orders, citing chaos. The Coast Guard dawdled, obstructing civilian aid. Park Geun-hye's 7-hour absence fueled rumors, from beauty treatments to cult rituals tied to Yu Byung-eun's Salvation Sect, linked to a 1987 mass suicide. Yu, found dead in June 2014, added mystery. In November 2015, Seoul's Supreme Court sentenced Lee Jun-suk to life for murder, sparing death, and used since 1997. 15 crew got 1.5 to 12 years. 53 total faced charges across agencies. Surviving Dan-1 students returned to school in 2016, haunted by trauma. A special graduation honored the lost, and survivors visited Jeju with their classmates' photos, finishing the trip that never was. From a criminal psychology lens, the Sewol tragedy reveals cowardice and systemic failure over malice. Lee Jun-suk's flight reflects self-preservation trumping duty, a classic stress response, not premeditation. The crew's paralysis suggests groupthink under pressure, deferring to flawed orders. Yu Byung-eun's cult ties and death hint at deeper motives, but evidence points to greed and negligence. Overloading for profit, over conspiracy. The Coast Guard's hesitance mirrors bureaucratic paralysis, not intent. This wasn't murder by design, but a cascade of human flaws, panic, denial, and apathy, killing hundreds. The real crime? No one took charge when it mattered most. Goodbye for now, until the next story unfolds.